Hello and welcome. Today I'm going to be doing a quick fire review sort of thing. I have not seen these games. They're between John and MBO. So I'm just going to go through them quickly without having ever seen the game. I have a rough idea of what the final scores are, but I don't know how they got there. I know that they're both competitive. We're going to be going through Duplex and then Triple Trail. So while I'm doing this, I'm going to be watching John's POV, so he's kind of going to be the guinea pig here a little bit. I'm probably going to disagree with a lot of what he does, but that doesn't necessarily mean that my way is better. This is just going to be giving some context about what I would have done and why, and then given the reasoning, you can decide what you think the best thing to do is, and hopefully that'll make you a better player. Yeah, we're gonna probably pause every spawn and talk about what I would do if I was John, as well as who I think should win the next spawn if both of them play it perfectly. And then we'll compare and see how both players play it out. Should be pretty exciting. All right, let's start with Duplex, and let me make sure I have my annotations working. Yes, okay. Let's get into it. All right, here we go. Off the bat, first spawn. Not really a super tricky one. There is the blast that both players could potentially grab on the way here. But if you do that, you're probably losing out on the yellow, but that might be okay. I think instinctually, I probably would go for the blast. And then my opponent, if they go for the blast, will have a little bit of a blast off. Otherwise, they would probably get the red, yellow, red. I would come get the blast and then try and get 2 points. And then the big prize here at the end of the spawn that both players need to be thinking about is the super speed for the default. So this spawn is not really particularly important in the context of the game, since there's not really a whole lot of points in it. It looks like it's 8 points total. So I mean 6-2 even is not really a big lead. So what I'm going to be looking for is who gets the super speed and if someone goes for this blast. Yep, John goes straight for, actually both of them go straight for that. There is a super speed here to get. I think both of them would actually get that. John does not opt for the blast path. Let's rewind a little bit just to see John's position at this. Yeah, so it has to pick up the super speed first. At this point, you need to go under the bridge. MBO has a bit of a lead. What MBO is probably trying to do is come down near this yellow, bounce off the wall, get the other yellows. And once again, we know that they have, neither of them has Ultra Blast and both of them have no power up because they committed super speeds to get over here. And so it's probably going to be a rush to get either this gyrocopter or this super speed on the way back. And obviously MBO has a lead here. So MBO, if I was him, is probably going to get these yellows, maybe this red, and then go to get this super speed. Because again, it's all about power up tempo on this map, especially since we are towards one of the ends of this long map. The next spawn is likely going to be behind us from this POV. But I expect MBO to win this spawn and probably tie up the game. Oh yeah, a little bit of a rough landing. So, this is definitely a bad idea. I'm sure you can understand why, but there's a super speed that we could just go get instead. And I bet you when the next spawn comes, if we had the super speed, it would be worth on average much more than this 1 point. Yep, there's the blue. Looks like John's gonna get it anyway. But I'm sure you can see that if he had the super speed and more time to go towards the middle of the map, this would have, probably been John's blue no matter what. I don't know how MBO really got over here since John wasn't really looking around for him. But either way, from this point of view, like John's going to clean up this spawn, and John also has a super speed since he didn't have to use it. So this is pretty big favor for John. This is a totally fine red to get, just because John has the super speed advantage. The spawn is a bit of a nothing spawn, but again, we're picking up the last red here when we could have just gone out for that super speed here. There's a really nice super speed line you can do where, sorry to rewind so much. Yeah, so after we get this yellow, instead of going back for this red like he does, the best thing to do would be coming to get this super speed, and then there's a blast in the distance here. And if you leave that last red, two things can happen. One, either MBO goes for it like he likes to do, in which case you have positioning advantage and power-up advantage. Or two, he doesn't go for it, and you have 5 seconds to get this super speed blast, and puts you in a great position. So it's win-win for John here if he just goes to get this super speed blast. It's done. Both players have to get over here, and this is a part where it really sucks. There's not really a good way to navigate over here. But with the blast, actually the best thing for him to do at this point is just blast onto this kind of platform and then kind of run along it for a long way, and then you can kind of get some momentum with jumping. But if you try and blast over here, there's actually another pit behind here, which you're going to see John fall into. Yep. So MBO is going to win that spawn. This is a little unfortunate. At this point, what John needs to be thinking is not, what can I get of this spawn? It's, what can I do to prepare for the next spawn? This is a situation where you died twice. You need to sack it in order to better prep for the next spawn. If I'm John, I'm probably going to get this Mega because Megas give John powers. But if I'm SV here, I'm probably turning around and getting the blast in the little tunnel. He actually opts to go over here for the yellow, which MBO still has not picked up. Okay, so this spawn, MBO is right on his heels. Good line here would just be probably here. That would be fine. You could also try and go this way and bounce off for the yellow, but given MBO is right behind him, that's probably not going to... He's probably never getting both yellows here, I think. Yeah. So they split that. Once again, he's passing towards the last red, which is a little rough. Just because there's a super speed up there. He doesn't have a super speed. And I think we saw MBO pick up a gyro earlier, which would really help in this situation. Actually had a super speed, which didn't end up working out for him. So this is fine. He wants to get this red and then leave the other one. At this point, the best thing to do is go get that blast in the tunnel because it brings you closer to the map and it gives you blast advantage. We know MBO doesn't have blast at this point. And once again, it's lose-lose for MBO because if John gets to this blast first, he's at blast disadvantage. And if he picks up the last red, John has positional advantage. Ends up going for the Mega and doesn't have blast, which can really suck in this position. This spawn, fortunately, doesn't have the blue in it, or that'd be really rough. It's also closer to where MBO was last seen. So I would expect MBO to win this. It's a very tight game at the moment. I don't see... Okay, MBO's there. Yeah, nice Mega by John. Although, really, MBO should have started on this side of the spawn, just once he heard Mega. Yeah, this is a good line by John. There's a nice 5-point sweep, and then he can bounce off the window and hopefully go for the other yellow before MBO, because MBO is going to be coming around from this side. So his ideal line looks something like this, but obviously this yellow is not going to be here. Or maybe it will be there. Yeah, it happens. We need to be getting this blast under the tunnel. This kind of double red into blast is very useful. Okay, he does get it, and he can turn around with a super speed, so that's good. In terms of this, with MBO having a lead, it's unlikely that John is going to be able to get the red-yellow-red sweep, which is obviously the best. I'm pretty sure the super speed is like in line with this red, so basically MBO can either get this or he can get the super speed first, but if he does that, it'll take more time. So John might want to get red and then super speed and kind of just salvage these reds and get the power up advantage. Yep, so that's what John's going to do. Misses multiple reds, unfortunately. Okay, so MBO is in Mega towards the middle of the map. John has a super speed and no blast. And this kind of position is a little bit awkward to stand just because there's so many like trenches and boxes around. You really, really want to be standing in the middle area of this map. It's just a lot more open, like on these high areas, and it's closer to a lot of the blues and high value spawns. So it would be easy for John to have just kind of passed towards here and then jump up here. Luckily, MBO's Mega ran out. I think this is going to be the last red in the spawn. He could have guessed that MBO might pick up the last red and use the time to prep the super jump and the blast in the tunnel. But as is, at least he's passing for the super jump, and the next spawn is basically going to be 50-50 who favors. I would give slight edge to John at this point. Okay, it's right there. MBO is there, but John with a nice blast. Okay, I really like what John does here. I see a lot of players going for exactly what MBO does, which is just kind of the double yellow sweep. But if you look at what the spawn is worth, that's 4 points. And if you can stop, then it's 4 points right here. Plus John gets a fifth, and then still has time to make it back to the center of the map. I like this from him as well, going to get the super speed. This is really good usage of the downtime. I would have tried to do it without committing the blast, though, because you really want blast here and as much of it as possible. Okay, this was a situation where John probably wanted to natural bounce because he ends up sliding, and this puts him a little bit out of position. So MBO gets most of the next spawn. Okay, once again, we have no blast, no power up, so MBO should win this pretty handily. I like using the reverse super speed because you know that you can pick up this one here. So at this point, I think John has super speed advantage, unless MBO got this one. But MBO is a little bit closer to the center of the map. You can see in this situation where you pick up the super speed, there's not really a lot of good places to use it. Using it off this ramp is kind of ambitious. And then this only goes to really 1 or 2 spawns in this corner of the map, which are not super common. But that is the one that appears, so John should definitely capitalize on this. Bounce off the wall, or just turn around that way. Definitely looks like John's at ping disadvantage in this series. Oh, really nice wall hit there. That's definitely the right way to do it. Yeah, this is kind of a situation where you can adapt to what your opponent is doing. MBO is very frequently going to pick up the last red. And so you can kind of mentally note that you're not going to have a lot of time to prep spawns. But you are going to often be in a better position if you just go toward the center with a couple seconds worth of time. And that's usually how I end up playing against MBO. Okay, this is a situation where the Mega Launch could be useful. Just jump Mega and Blast should get you there. The hard part is controlling your spin on the landing. He could also try and make the jump with just Jump Blast, but he would need a decent amount of speed, and controlling your landing is hard there too, but you would have the ability to kind of Mega scare MBO. Actually, MBO just gets there first. There's the Mega. Yep. Okay, so this is kind of important. Notice how John does something really smart here. He actually goes for the expired red first, because it adds 1 second to the comp timer, and also if he goes for it last, the next spawn will appear first. So that's why it's an important one to get, because MBO is not coming back to this spawn. So this way he can pick up an extra point and give himself some extra time to get ready for the next spawn, and he goes out of his way to get this super speed. So well played there by John. Clawing his way a little bit back in this game, but there is 30 seconds left. And so when you're down 14 points or 16 points like this, and there's only 30 seconds left, you need to kind of opt into more risk taking. What that means is maybe standing further away from the center or doing different things like standing next to blue spawns like on these bridges and just praying that you get a bit lucky. John should win this spawn, but not by really enough to close the gap. Interesting. Okay, this is a situation again where it's fine to take up this red because you don't have time on the clock and also you have power up advantage. And some nice yellows here. I probably would have just gone for the sweep through the other yellow, but at this point, it doesn't really make a huge difference. And that's game 1. So MBO takes that by about 15-ish points, 20 almost. So looking back about why MBO won this, John picked up a couple last reds when he was not in a good position. Also, there were some pathing mistakes, such as trying to jump over this area of the map and just falling into a pit. That lost him an entire spawn. He tried to overcompensate a bit when that happened and still make it to the spawn, where it would have just been better to prep. There was a lot of situations at the start and middle of the game where he could have prepped better, especially with where he stood. There's usually a few good areas in this map to stand, which are on these high platforms with the super speed. When he did have a super speed, he usually wasn't on them or wasn't situated in time for the next spawn. So that would be my feedback for John on this map. Hard to tell for MBO without seeing his POV, but it seemed like he played a decent game. Okay, let's move on to Triple Trail. Whenever that is. Okay. This one's going to be much more strategy focused, I think. So, first spawn is immediately above them. You will notice that there's not necessarily a lot of power-ups nearby. However, there is an Ultra Blast behind them, which is probably where I would start. And then if you get to the Ultra Blast first, you can definitely play a little bit of Blast Chicken and see who makes it up top. This is a situation where you would probably want to blast first, just because whoever blasts second will be blasting you up in the air, and you'll make it to the top. Okay, so MBO doesn't go for that. John doesn't blast up. I do think he would have saved some time if he did. Okay, I see what he's saying about his blast not doing anything. This one's really unfortunate, but he is just barely out of range. So the other thing to note, I'll explain a little bit here for John's sake about why this blast doesn't work. So he's coming up here. The blast radius is about 4 tiles, right? So we're just short of this line, right? So his blast radius is about here in a straight line, right? Here. But it's a circle. It's not a square. And so from here, it looks something not quite like that. It looks something like this around him, you know? So for one, at this moment, MBO is just outside of that range. And second, it seems like we're on ping disadvantage from what I was able to gather from the last game. And so what that means is that what John is seeing right now from MBO is actually a little bit in the past. And so if he's got about 120 ping to Ashburn, maybe a little bit more than that, when he presses his blast button, MBO is actually probably like here. There's a little bit of prediction that the game can do. I'm not sure if he has the prediction on right now, but that would compensate for it a little bit. And so by the time he presses his button, it's got to go 120 ping to the server that says, hey, John blasted at this location. And even if John moves to here on his screen, by the time the blast command has been sent to the server, it's still going to be here because John's game said we blasted at this location XYZ at this time. And so even if he's here at this point, the blast is going to go off here. And so on high ping, this could lead to some disparity in expectations with what happens with your blast. And so the right way to blast against players that have a ping advantage is you need to be closer than this. Or they need to be coming like towards you. and then you can kind of blast them like left or right. So a much better situation for John would be to give up this yellow. I mean, for one, I think he should have just used the Ultra Blast to come up here from the ramp. But if he's still going to hold on to Blast at this point, I think he should not use it here. But MBO is obviously going to sweep over here, get the gyro in yellow, but John can just come here and blast him off this edge. And then John has a big advantage because he gets gyro advantage plus these gems. Anyway, that's a lot for the first spawn, but yeah. Because of this, John now has 2 points, no power-up, no blast. Is able to still get a decent amount of points on this next spawn. This is not a good place to stand. You generally want to keep moving because this part of the map is a little bit further away. I would have liked to see him go back to get the super speed. That's right here next to the teleporter on the right side, since that opens up a lot of options for him. He's going to take this teleporter, but this teleporter is not very good. It only takes you to where the cannon is. Wow, okay. Okay, John gets the gyrocopter, which can be pretty impactful on this. The pre-gyrocopter is interesting because there's a little more than 1/3 chance that the next spawn is on this blue island. I say more than 1/3 just because there's a lot of gems on this island compared to the orange one. I think pink is probably the most likely in terms of the amount, and then blue and then orange. So it's a lot of risk when you're gyroing and then MBO is picking up a mega here. It does pay off for him, but it's a lot of risk for this early in the game. In terms of like where he's flying, these spawns are like kind of hard to get a good sweep going. And so what I would actually prefer to do is to go out of bounds as soon as possible. So you can kind of reset your bearings. And so in order to do that, you would want to go for this yellow and go out of bounds. Because the out of bounds trigger on this side is like behind the orange island, so you have to like fly a long way. But the out of bounds on this side is like very close to the orange island. Just because there's like a blue island here, and this orange island has more depth to where the spawn is. And so going for this corner one is going to be a little bit more useful. He also blasts pretty early, which lets him not get the best angle coming down. But it does work out. He is able to get both yellows. You can see that he probably could have won that spawn harder, though. This is a pretty clear-cut situation where the teleporter is good. Although John did jump on it before being 100% sure necessarily where it was, but that's good instincts. I do like picking up the blast here. Okay, so MBO goes for the blast and then goes down. Okay, this blast from John is never going to do anything, by the way. I'll explain why. It's because John is above MBO when he does it. And so if you blast someone down, your blast vector is split between vertical and horizontal gravity. And so not much is really going to happen, since he's just going to go slam into the ground and instantly lose that momentum. Plus John is not really contesting the yellow, but he does pick up this other blast, so not really a whole lot to say. Yeah, another little bit of a wasted blast. Yeah, this is definitely a situation where the pink teleporter is the best, because it takes you right over to where the gems are. MVO was just there first. I don't like the path MVO took, though, at all. Once we get here, we can see that the best line is going to be to get the blast. And so you could just kind of get this and then come back and do this, jumping over. So MVO got probably like 2 points here, and he's going to have worse positioning. Okay, you already had blast, I guess, but it's still useful to deny the other player blast. I don't know why John is sitting here. There's a super speed that is way better. This is also a situation where you can just get a ton of speed and just sweep and go out of bounds to the left, because again, this out of bounds trigger is right here on the side. Get the blast, yep. Okay, yeah, you can definitely see the lag. So if I'm trying to blast him right here as John, I'm actually like walking forward a little bit so that when I blast here, it sends MBO sideways. Because where John is now, when he blasts, it's going to send MBO mostly forward into the yellow. And that is what happens here, unfortunately for John. But yeah, you can see that delay. It mostly knocks him forward because when the blast actually goes off, MBO is in front of where he was on John's screen. Yep, cannon will be the best here. And that's something very important about triple trail with this cannon. You can land directly on the blast, and there's not really much downside for doing so, other than being a little bit trickier to control your landing. MBO is still over here for some reason, so John can really clean up this spawn and should be able to tie up the game here. Oh, did I just completely misread that? Oh, yeah, it was just an unlucky frame where it looked like his thing was here. This blast does absolutely nothing as well. If you're not sure if your blast is going to be impactful, it's usually best to just hold it. Because right here, yeah, John blasts there. And it does kill him, but for what? It's over 1 red. And the expected value of our blast, especially on this map, is going to be a lot higher than 1 point. There's just a lot more that we can do with it. Good pathing to get the blast. This is another good teleporter situation. Could have tried to play blast games with MBO on the teleporter, but not a huge consequence. Okay, I'm not really sure why John's pathing over here this way. Just because it's more likely that he needs to go to a different island, and that pink teleporter is not necessarily the best option, but here it's going to be the best option. Generally, though, I would stay near the kind of the cannon area. Okay, this is good to get the blast. Basically a tie game. At this point, obviously, just go for a gyro sweep on the blue. You'll respawn, and he has Ultra Blast, so he could look to try and blast MBO, but not able to get there in time, unfortunately. John is doing well with pathing for the blast after he uses them. It's mostly just the situations where he is blasting that leaves little to be desired. I mean, turning around to get the teleporter there when he already had momentum. This mega is very valuable to get on Triple Trail because if the spawn is on the blue island next, he's going to have mega advantage. And if the spawn is on a different island, you can use the mega to traverse. It's especially useful to getting to this orange one, the bottom part of the orange island. But you can also use it if you're fancy to do kind of an edge hit to get to the pink island with blast. But popping mega here to get the blue should just be no contest for him. And a very favorable next spawn for John here. Saving the mega. Let's see. Okay, he goes for the teleporter. He could have tried to do the mega fancy pants stuff. Not sure about this last red. The game is tied at this point, and so it could have been better to pick up another power up, but he's not going to be punished for it here. Going out of bounds there is not bad at all, with a nice point sweep. MBO very quickly gets that blue. John gets pretty much everything else, so the time is very low at this point. And because of that, MBO is most certainly going to go for this last red. That's just what he's going to do. I would probably just grab this super jump below him. And odds are John will be able to scoop up a couple points quicker. He only has to win the next spawn, really, to win the game. Yep, it's over there. Try and get the blast. Good blast. Oh, that's unfortunate. Is there anything he could have done differently here? Yeah. This blast could have been better. Because look at when he blasts. He blasts in the air. And so this blast actually doesn't do anything to MBO. Not surprising, with like 7 seconds left, you're kind of just going to panic blast whenever you can. But like MBO is going to make a desperate sweep for whatever gems he can, which is probably going to be the same line John went for, right, with these 3 reds. But what John can do is he can anticipate that MBO is going to do this line. We have 7 seconds, by the way. This is a lot of time, given the spawn is right in front of us. John could just sit here, stand here, blast. MBO is coming down with momentum, and then he can blast here. This will send MBO off. And so he can get these 3 reds and maybe even this 4th red uncontested. These 3 reds would put him at 94. So it'd be 94, 93. MBO respawns, and then they probably split these 2 last reds 1 for 1, and then John would, in theory, win by 1 point. Obviously, that's a lot of ifs, but that's probably what I would have tried to do in this situation, is just have a more effective blast. There's also always a chance that the next spawn is in reach for both players on the pink island, but it was really just too close to call there. Okay, those were 2 really good games. Hopefully some decent insight there on those 2 maps, Duplex and Triple Trail, both which are pretty popular. So yeah, those are some things that you can think about and apply in your games. Let me know if you enjoyed the video, and have a good one.